and there was a white-only sign for water in one of the service stations that I stopped. So I decided I'm going to take me a little white sign. Take it. I did. I took that sign, and I got the heck out of there, and I got headed on back through Arkansas, back up into Kansas. But that was my first rebellious moment that I had experienced with the segregation piece, that I started to understand what it was.
And I am speaking to you. I'm not selling you nothing. I am not.
How nobody can find it, and we got that ego, and we got that testosterone.
With that, I'd say that District 3 is in great hands. We have so much more in store.
The data centers that are coming to some of the more rural areas in South Georgia.
One would either not only did he step down, but I'm almost certain that he would.
Hey, family, welcome to another episode of the Black Man's Roundtable. We are, first of all, I want to thank the audience. We are in our fourth season. This is the beginning of our fourth season, and this is our first episode of our fourth season. So I definitely want to give a shout out to the followers of the Black Man's Roundtable podcast. And hey, we're ready to kick off 2026 with some outstanding authors, Black authors that we're having on. We are having these authors on not because, yes, they all wrote books, obviously they're authors, but it's more about their stories than just their books. And so we're going to kick off our very first episode with our Black author series today. And we have on the Honorable Mr. Robert Moore, and I'm going to do an introduction. I know you guys are so used to me doing a very short introduction of the guests we have on the Black Man's Roundtable podcast, and I usually let them come on and tell their journey, their story, before we get started. But in this case, we have a very distinguished author, a very distinguished man, with a story that is just as intriguing, just as interesting as his book, Off My Neck. And so quickly, I'm going to do, as quick as I can, I'm going to do an intro of the Honorable Mr. Moore, and then we're going to bring him out. Robert Moore's career stands as a pawn of the most unconventional and influential trajectories in modern American law enforcement and public service. His rise began in 1976 when, after only 3 years of seniority and no prior rank, he was selected to lead the Illinois State Police's inaugural Affirmative Action Program. The early appointment was highly unusual and marked him as a leader capable of navigating civil rights, equity, and institutional reform. Moore quickly became a respected advocate for fair treatment of women and minorities in policing. His work in civil rights, community engagement, and organizational change later formed the basis for practical strategies adopted nationwide. His ideas, put forth in his historical article, Strategies for Increasing Black Police Executives, were published in May and June 1983. Issues of the elite FBI law enforcement bulletin and studied by police departments, colleagues, and academic institutions across the country, becoming a national model. I also want to add that he was born and raised in Algoma, Mississippi. Mr. Moore grew up in a time and place where a young Black boy's horizons seemed limited to the plow and the mules. He became part of the Great Migration moving north to Illinois, where he would shatter barriers after barrier in law enforcement. He also became one of the first Black Illinois state troopers to serve as Equal Employment Opportunity Director, fighting for justice both on the streets and within the system itself. And in 1994, President Bill Clinton appointed him as a United States Marshal, making him only the second Black presidential appointee to that position in Illinois. walking in the footsteps of legends like Bass Reeves and Frederick Douglass. And today we have Mr. Moore on and to discuss his autobiography, Off My Neck, a book published through his own company, Black Marshal Publishing. Honorable Mr. Moore, it is great having you on, sir. How are you doing today?
I am wonderful, Rodney, and I am so pleased that you have invited me to come on and on your spectacular show here. And I am just honored to be here with you tonight.
Sir, it is an honor having you on, and I mean that with the greatest respect that I can possibly say. And so look, that I have a whole nother page. Here's what the audience doesn't know. I have an entire another page of introduction just for this one man. So with that, Mr. Moore, we're going to go right into talking about your early life and the meaning of the title of the book, which is Off My Neck. Now, in my research, I definitely found that the what you were mainly talking about in that title of Off My Neck is getting segregation off your neck, basically. And let's talk about what does that mean to you, sir?
What that means, Rodney, is the fact that I grew up in Mississippi, a little segregated town called Algoma, Mississippi, where the rebel flag is still flown today. And but that's home. I have a 40-acre farm still in the city limits there, and but what it meant for me at that point in time, you had to. I went in service and came back, but there was we found that there was the discrimination, there was segregation, there was second class citizenship, all those things that I had around my neck. And as long as I stayed in Mississippi, I felt that I had a burning desire to get these things off my neck because I felt that I had what it took to rise to the top and to become a important person in life. And so that's what I meant. I mean that, once you get it off your neck, and I'm telling young Black men today, it doesn't matter what it is that's on your neck, whether it's drugs, whether it's lack of education, whether it's like anything that you got around your neck that's stopping you from rising to the top. And you will see how, in my book, you will see how I rose to the top after I got certain things off my neck. I got Mississippi off my neck. But you'll find out in the end, I go back to Mississippi. I go back to Mississippi, and 37 years later to become the highest, one of the highest law enforcement officer in Jackson as chief of police. So that's what it means growing up in that little Algoma town of little town of Algoma. Fortunately for us, my family, my dad owned our farm. My dad bought our farm in 1908, 1907, I'm sorry. And so we never had the opportunity to sharecrop, live on anybody else's place. So my dad and my mom was very respected in that community. But we grew up in the Jim Crow laws, the all those things that you heard about and read about. And so, but as I progressed I found myself could not stay away from Mississippi because I always went back for every year, and I still go back all the time because it's home. There's no place like home.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yes, sir. And before we get into the entering the Illinois State Police, I want for you to discuss how the segregation growing up in Mississippi under all of the possible things that could hold you back, some of the things that you've already talked about. How did growing up in Mississippi with the segregation and all of that, how did it help you, throughout your career growing up with such a heavy load, a heavy foot, if you will, on your neck?
Well, one of the things that we dealt with as we grew up in Mississippi, all of us. You learn how to deal with your environment. And that was the very first thing that we did. We learned there were certain things that we looked at. We didn't know about the definitions of all the stuff that I know about now. I didn't, we just went about our business. We went tried to get educated. We played basketball. I was voted most likely to succeed by my classmates and my teachers, and so I'm concentrating on scholarships to get to go to college, and concentrating on helping my dad raise that cotton field, that cotton and corn and sorghum that we made. My dad had his own business too. He was a sorghum molasses maker, and of course I had to learn to do that. I had to help do that. So we started entrepreneurship long time, way back in Mississippi. But we had that system where we sold those molasses. We go downtown on the square every Saturday to sell those molasses, of which people will bring to us to produce for them. But we produced basically, we grew the sorghum, we made the molasses, and we sold the molasses. So now, as you see way down the road here, I have my own publishing company. I write my books, I publish my books, and I market my books. That's where we are tonight. We're marketing my book tonight. So, but those are things that we learned from my dad, and say you always go back and say what was taught to you. What did your people teach you as you grew up through this system? But the system in Mississippi, it was harsh, but in Mississippi, the state is broken up into about four different areas. So in the southern part of the state, the middle part, the northern and the eastern part, and we grew up in the northeastern part, and that's where Ole Miss is, the University of Mississippi. And things were different up there because of education, but it was violent in the Jackson area. It was violent in the southern part of that in Mississippi. And when I went back in 2002 to become chief of police under the first black mayor, I thought perhaps that all that stuff had disappeared, but it hadn't. It hadn't. They were still fighting the Civil War in 2002 when I went back to become chief of police. So, but being prepared, learning how to deal with that environment. And when in my third stop, when I went to Savannah, Georgia, the publication that came out about my coming to Georgia, it says that, oh, he's not a Yankee. He's he's not a Yankee. He's from Mississippi. He's just coming back home to Georgia. That was in my press release. That was done by the city manager and chief of police there in Savannah, Georgia, when I took that job in Savannah. And when I went back to Jackson in 2002, the headlines and said they're part of the press release was the fact, oh, he's from Pontotoc, Mississippi. He's not a Yankee. so so my growing up, and they understood that I knew how to deal with different environments.
Yes.
The environment of growing up in a segregated place, the environment of that. But when I got to Savannah, that was a sophisticated. Ooh, that was so much more sophistication in Savannah than it was in Mississippi that I grew up in. And but those are the memories that I have, and I understand, and I understood that and some of the reasons that I got selected to come back south twice to manage police department, because they knew my background. They knew that I knew how to negotiate with people. I knew how to get along with people in different cultures. and that is still resonating today in my life.
Yes,
So
sir.
it's been quite a ride for me. One that I wouldn't even believe myself. But I knew, and
Absolutely.
if you in my book, I wrote about the fact that I knew that I was going to be important one day. I did. I
Yes, sir.
knew that. I knew that because
And you know what, Mr. Moore, I also think that almost every kid who you know from a very early age if you're going to be um an important person. You just feel it. And so, believe it or not, that is something that I've run into with a few people. They knew from a very early age. But I do want to, and we're going to come back to the Savannah story because I want you to talk a little bit more about, your leadership there in Savannah. But what I want to hit on the Illinois State Police, because that was the thing that began your law enforcement career as an Illinois State Police. At the time that you did this, Illinois State Police, as a black policeman, your authority was extremely limited. And so what I want you to talk about is what your defining challenges you face entering that specific institution, especially a Southern boy coming from Mississippi. We know that there's a lot of migration from Mississippi to Illinois. But I specifically want you to talk about your challenges in being a black police officer in the Illinois State Police, sir.
well, I think I need to let the audience know that my career in law
Hmm.
enforcement began in Rockford, Illinois. I became in 1970. I became a deputy sheriff, and I stayed there for 2 years. But I got a challenge one day from a white deputy who had gone to Illinois State Police. He blew his leg out and had to come back to Rockford. And we were having breakfast one morning, and he told me that discussion got around. Well, how many blacks on state police? Well, he said he didn't see none. He said the reason why we didn't see none, they can't pass the test. So of course, 6 months later, Robert Moore is signing his name on that paper saying that he made a pretty darn good score on his test and his physical ability test, and that welcome to Illinois State Police. And so this was 1972, and as I started to migrate through that system and start to do some research, that we found out that the Illinois State Police hired the very first black state trooper in the nation in
Hmm.
1941. And William Boyd Lindsay was his name. And so I'm coming, of course, 1941 into 1972. That, when I got aboard, there was only about 19 black troopers on that I could count. I couldn't totally verify that because my data wasn't that scientific at that point. But as in 1972, that's when June of October 72, went to the police academy and in Springfield, and I had to drive all the way from Rockford, Illinois, to Springfield every week for 21 weeks
Wow.
to become a state trooper. That was some of the challenges that you had. You had to be willing to take the risk to come, and the other thing that you had to risk taking giving up your job back in your home state uh, because of the fact that you had to pass a physical, you had to pass a medical exam, and there were some things that I found out that I didn't know when I got to become that trooper, that I had a small hearing loss that occurred
Mm.
in the army, and I had no idea that was there. So fortunately, I got wavered on that, and so those are some of the early challenges of which we faced. But that challenge from that white deputy saying that blacks couldn't pass that state police test, and so we met that challenge. We
Yes,
met
sir.
we got pushed, so we pushed back. I started the pushing back on this stuff sometime when I was still in the Army and I was heading to back to Fort Riley, Kansas, and there was a, white only sign for water in one of the service stations that I stopped. So I decided I'm going to take me a little white sign, take it back to the Army with me, and I did. I took that sign, and I got the heck out of there, and I got headed on back through Arkansas back up into Kansas. But that was my first rebellious moment that I had experienced with the segregation piece, that I started to understand what it was because it was visible. No,
Yeah.
you don't drink out of this fountain. You drink over there in that other fountain. That was some visible sign. It was around us in Mississippi growing up. I don't
Hmm.
think we paid it no attention.
Right.
I really don't. Uh, but as we grew up and our mind started to uh, filter and understand what was going on in America, and it took us a while. Took us a while to get that. But once I started to get that feeling that something is wrong with this system, then the other incident of which got I was in coming through Little Rock, Arkansas, and on the bus back home, I was in uniform, and I came and got off the bus station, and I wanted something to eat, and of course we when you were black, you had to go around to the back and to get your food. Now everybody goes to the back. We're at McDonald's. At McDonald's go to everybody. But we I think we initiated that way back when in Mississippi and other towns where the white owners had cut the hole in their restaurant, and you had to walk around to the back because you couldn't go up in that establishment. But that was the second thing that I did. I walked up in there. I asked for my food, and I got it. And that broke to me. I never felt like a second class citizen again because I didn't allow myself to feel that way. Sometimes that's another thing you get off your neck. I got that off my neck.
Right.
Feeling that's an inferiority piece that's driven into you. That inferiority complex is and we can't get rid of it today. It's out
Exactly.
there today that when people want to step on you, they will they'll deflate your ego. You got to get beyond that. You got to that and that's what I did. I like I say I got that off my neck, and don't feel that I'm second class citizen no more. I feel that hey, I'm up at the top. I'm at the top. And so as we move down the spectrum here, and it's 3 years later, there's a big thing going on in the Illinois State Police. They got sued in 1970 by a white female for discrimination because some district commander told a white female, "Well, you need to go home and raise babies. You don't need to be out here trying to be no trooper." Wow! And what did that do? That changed everybody's life, right? In Illinois, in the state police, changed my life. Changed my life tremendously,
Yeah. I can
simply
imagine.
because of the fact that they had to meet those requirements that they agreed to. They had to have a hiring quota, if you will, and they had to develop a affirmative action office and had to be staffed.
Mhm.
So that came about, and I'm going back up on in my district, in District 15 up Chicago, Rockford area. And the district manager calls a big old nice meeting and say, "Y'all come on, we're gonna talk to y'all about affirmative action. What we gotta do. So we're gonna be hiring." And so my question was, we're already hired. I'm already hired. So what about promotion? I asked, what about promotion? It got so quiet. A mouse, you could have heard a mouse run across the door. You could have heard a mouse come across the floor. And so I didn't get an answer, of course. And but then we all go back to our district, go back to patrolling where I was on the tollway. And 2 weeks later, I'm getting a notice to come to Springfield, Illinois to interview for a position I ain't even know anything about. I didn't even, I was I wasn't even surprised that I'm supposed to come, that they were considering me to come bring me to Springfield to become the first affirmative action officer for the Illinois State Police. I got 3 years seniority on the job. And I'm getting, because I asked that question, I guess, or because they saw leadership. I'm thinking that they saw the same leadership that my daddy saw and what the corporation saw when they made me a foreman. So I'm assuming that somebody was recognizing stuff that I wasn't recognizing for my own self. So I'm now interviewing, and of course I come down to Springfield, and into my interview. When I get up in my end of my interview, I get up and turn my chair over. I said, "Oh crap, this is not going well." I got embarrassed because I turned my chair over. I said, "That's it. I'm not that." So before I walked back out of the room, good, I guess they were telling me that you got the job. Oh Lord, I got a
Wow.
job I don't know nothing about. I don't know a thing about the affirmative action. I don't know how to spell it. But that's how I became
Yeah.
the first Black affirmative action officer. And I was stationed in the Personnel Bureau of the Illinois State Police, the Division of State Police. And
Gotcha.
so in 1977, uh, I got transferred to the director's office along with the whole EEO office. The whole thing
Right.
got transferred from the Division of State Police to the director's office. And so in July of 1977, I became the first Black EEO director for the Illinois State Police with a
Yes,
rank
sir.
of no rank, no rank at all. And so as I ascended to the top, and my leadership skills that I had developed over the years, I had to learn because there was nobody there to teach me.
Right.
So I was self-taught, that they say is yours. But one thing they did do, they did provide me with training. They provided me,
Yeah.
they sent me everywhere I wanted to go to become what I became.
Yes, sir.
And so that was one of the biggest things that I look back, and the man that the lieutenant, the white lieutenant that made the decision to make me that affirmative action officer. He's still in my life. He still mentors me.
That's good stuff.
He sends me texts all the time. He's so proud of somebody. He followed my career. He followed my
Mhm.
career, and
Yep.
he made sure that I got where. So I had to depend. I had no Black mentor when I grew up and come through that. I had to turn. I had to turn the other way. I had to seek out. They sought me out. There was another one that he was superintendent of state police. That's the one that brought me to Georgia.
Yep.
Another white mentor. And I get want to tell your audience they can open doors too. That you don't have to have a Black mentor to have a door open for you.
That's right.
And if I think if I had waited for Black mentor to open, I still might have been waiting because it just wasn't there. They weren't there
Exactly.
to do that. But I got passed on from one white mentor to another, and because they saw what I had in me that I didn't see, leadership. And at that time, during the 70s, and everybody was looking for leaders because they had to make some adjustments to their lifestyle, to their organization.
Yep.
And so there was not, when it come back to the Illinois State Police, we only had one sergeant, maybe two sergeants, one sergeant, one lieutenant, which had gotten older, and they weren't necessarily interested in EEO, affirmative action, and so they had to find some new blood. They had to find some new blood that was willing to learn, and they had the ability to learn. And I guess I fitted that bill. And so as I moved into that system, I had two types of support or lack of support. I had at the top of the organization, from the governor's office all the way down to the appointment of the directors. I had total support because we had to meet certain criteria. But down in below in the rank and file, that's where I caught hell. That's where I caught hell. That's where I got called. I growing up in Mississippi, we talked about that. I got called first time to my face. I got called an uppity nigger in Springfield, Illinois, after I moved from Mississippi.
Right.
I got asked, and I moved to a nice house in one of the nice neighborhoods. I'm asking, "Oh, are you living beyond your means?" Because I hadn't gotten right. I took the job. I took it as a lateral. No promotion, no money. When I came from Rockford to Springfield, those issues there were just germane in terms of understanding, you know, what I was walking into. I
Right.
think it was vicious from that affirmative action. If you understand what went on in the 70s, especially in state police, in the 70s, in the 80s, and the 90s, and when we started bringing aboard a whole lot of black troopers, so the community folks, white folk community, they went to the legislature and said they ain't hired nothing but black folks.
Hmm.
State, yes, sir. They hired nothing but black folks.
Yep.
But you know what had happened before?
So some kind of way, Mr. Moore, when they see one or two black people, their minds, I see like 200 instead of two. But anyway, go ahead, sir.
Yes, but when you saw all of them coming in, but here's the deal on that: the colonels and all that stuff, they told the legislature, well, we would, before I got there, they said, oh, we would hire them, but we just can't find them. Yes, sir. That was their excuse for not hiring, because they couldn't find them. So, but I found them. When I came in, I found them. And then they run to the legislature and say, "Ooh, they hired nothing but black folk. We can't have this." So, those are some of my experiences that I had, and not only that, but I was I got control of the distribution system from the academy, and because I wrote my paper, my thesis paper, uh, from the academy, from my University of Illinois, I wrote about everything that I was experiencing, and my thesis paper was on adverse impact in the Illinois State Police performance evaluation. So I got some major changes because of that, but also I got some changes to deal with the distribution system, because we had 14 districts throughout the state of Illinois, but everybody was getting sent back north, Chicago, and I got sent back to Rockford, which I wanted to do, but when I got control of that system, I set up two systems, one for for the black officers, and I would choose the districts that I wanted them to go to integrate that district.
Mm.
Oh, did I get hated for that from both sides? Black folks couldn't go back to Chicago area where they wanted to go, where most of them were being hired from. And so I had to send some of them all the way down to Cairo, Illinois, to Macomb, Illinois. Oh, they didn't like that. They didn't like that. But years later, they thanked me. They thanked me for it because when the promotion started coming down, they were all over the place. They were there in the district, sometimes by themselves, and nobody there except them. So I had a vision that I know I had a major vision for what I wanted from that distribution system. I did. I had a great thing. But as I moved down the line and working on my master's degree, while I'm still running the EEO office, not the director's office, and so because of that educational piece, then I got selected again to go to the Southern Police Institute down in Louisville, Kentucky, University of Louisville, and I went there knowingly that you had to be a lieutenant in order to go to these classes, these 3 month courses that they had. So, but I'm still a trooper. I ain't got promoted because they're messing with my performance evaluation. And
Right.
so that's how I wrote that paper on adverse impact on performance evaluation because I had got tired of getting the average rating. I'm 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 a dude that's running a trooper with 3 years of seniority, and I'm running an entire department, and I'm getting an average rating. Did that make sense? No, made no sense at all. So, but still, they still moved me ahead. They still move, even though I hadn't got that rank. Evidently, they saw my rank coming. They saw my rank coming, it, uh, but uh, but they sent me to Southern Police Institute, and I went there and I wrote the paper called "Strategy for Increasing Black Police Executives" because I was being hampered by by getting promoted. I was getting hampered, and in the book I write about it in the book, and in terms of how it made me feel, what it took away from me to have just to continue to get an average rating, which forced me to write a much higher test than my white counterpart. Had to write that because of the low graduation, and that made no sense because I was doing the job. And so finally, after coming back from Southern Police Institute, 3 things happened. 83 was a good year for me. It was a magnificent year. I graduated from Southern Police Institute. I got the FBI came in and published that paper that I wrote. And on July 15th, I got promoted to Special Agent Sergeant. A lot of stuff happened in 83. And also I had to transfer out of EEO office because EEO was dying at that point in time. People were, it was, I had been there 8 years. So the assistant director said, you got to get out and get some field experience. I had not had field experience. So I was the only administrative experience that I had. So I moved, they transferred me, and they said, we'll promote you when you send a letter to me requesting the transfer.
Right.
But I got forced to transfer. I didn't want to leave that all because it had treated me so good. I had rode to the top. I traveled every place I wanted to go, and I was just, ooh, I had to go back under somebody because I had no supervisor. I had indirect supervision, but I had no supervisor, but I had to go back into the system in order to learn more about the system because I had not learned. I had not been in criminal investigation, had not been in internal investigation. So I got sent to internal affairs, internal investigation. And so 6 months later, I get a phone call. I'm getting a call from Georgia. saying, do you want to come to Savannah, Georgia, become the deputy chief of police and for criminal investigation for the city of Savannah, Georgia? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the man who just got appointed, just got promoted to special agent sergeant? And you know what it reminds me of? The heat of the night. You familiar with the heat of the night?
I am. Mm-hmm.
Sidney Poitier coming out of Philadelphia, going to Sparta, Mississippi. And then we got Howard Rollins going to Sparta in the heat of the night with the television series. Now, you didn't know, I am the first real black chief of detectives that went to the South from the North. I am the first that got recruited to come and run. But I didn't come to be a detective in Savannah, Georgia. I came to run the whole bureau.
All right now.
The whole bureau, which was over 50 something detectives. Yes. And I had never worked in a criminal investigation bureau before. You remember me coming to Springfield to be an EEO officer with no experience?
Mm-hmm.
The Chrysler Corporation chose me to be a foreman with no experience. That was my first failure, of course. But I did that. But I came to Savannah, Georgia, which was the greatest hill that I had to ever climb to take over criminal investigation. That's homicide, that's bureau burglary, you name it, juvenile, everything in that department. And I'm saying, how in the world am I going to do this? First of all, I had to take risks coming out of Illinois. I had to make that decision for my family, move my family to way away from Springfield, Illinois. And after being successfully promoted and going to Southern Police Institute and those things, and having that paper published by the FBI, but that I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. That was a godsend to have a director of the FBI, William Webster, send me a letter saying that I'm going to publish your paper. And so
And this was in 1983, right?
this was 83, 1983, exactly. But he said that we're gonna print your paper and we're gonna distribute it nationwide. And it went to every police department in the nation. It went to every college in the nation. And so my life got pushed out there real quick as a writer. That's when I became notified of being a writer. And so, but
So this paper actually helped you launch your writing.
it did. Oh my God, did it ever? Did it ever? That paper, and it had never happened before. The FBI had never published a black author before, and especially a black state trooper from Illinois that down in the rank had not even made his first rank, and he's writing administrative stuff for the nation. He's writing the DEI marvel for the nation. That is amazing. I still want, and one complaint that I do have is the fact that I belong to the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. They had never, ever specifically acknowledged what I did for law enforcement. They have never really fully acknowledged what I did. Now, Jet Magazine did. You know when Jet Magazine was around? Jet Magazine did. The FBI did. But my own organization, Noble, has never, ever to this day given me credit for writing the models for the nation on DEI. So I'm complaining this year because it's the 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
50th anniversary of Noble, and I'm complaining. I really am. Because, but what I didn't, I guess I had no real status other than being an EEO officer around the nation. I didn't have the star power. Pick up the phone, and say, "This is me." I didn't have that star power at that point in time. I can do that now. I can do that, but I didn't have the star power, and if people that recognize the importance of that paper, the people that recognize that they wasn't necessarily out promoting that because who is this trooper, black trooper writing this stuff and telling us what to do across the nation in terms of how, but they were successful. They adopted it. They adopted it all across this nation. And and not only did my writing career, but it drove me to the executive suites of law enforcement.
Mm.
That was my step ladder. That was my step ladder to the executive suites of law enforcement. When I got that call from Savannah, and I took the opportunity to take that, and I haven't been back since.
Yes, sir.
I retired as a U.S. Marshal.
Yes, sir.
My last job was as chief of police. So I didn't. It was an amazing story that has never happened in law enforcement before. And when I came back out of Savannah, I went back to Chicago area. I got recruited away from my mission in my life, law enforcement. I got recruited into child welfare.
Which I was going to, that was my next, that was
Yeah,
exactly, that was my next area I was going to
yeah,
ask you to.
yeah.
Let's move back up to Chicago, up to Illinois in the Chicago area. And because like you're about to talk about is your career had this shift into working with the Illinois Department of or Department of Children and Family Services. Yes, sir. Please, how did working with these vulnerable children kind of reshape your understanding of public safety, because it can have that effect. And I think that oftentimes whenever we are in one career and we end up going in another area, especially working with children or young people, which is the same reason a lot of people, they come out understanding a whole lot different when they work in one career, because I did this myself, and then you work with children. For me, it was a public educator. Man, it really makes you understand what you used to do a whole lot better. So I want you to talk about how did working with those vulnerable children kind of reshape your understanding of public safety?
Well, I think that there's another script that's a part of that chapter 7 of me coming back
Okay.
out of Savannah that I need to share with your audience. That uh, while I was still with the state police, my wife and I became foster children, foster parents to abused children. And the very first two that we took, one was a young black male who had gotten burnt, and his face gotten just totally burnt bad. And we took him then and became foster parents to him, and until he was able to get back on his feet. And then the second child that we had, she had sickle cell anemia. I found that I couldn't bond with her. These are lessons learned. That you can't bond with everybody. You can't. It just don't go that way. And so we started moving on down the line, and then we have another young lady that we brought in, and she had been kind of starved a little bit, and mother abandoned her, and so we took her in, but we found out that we didn't want to let her go. We did not want to let her go, so we adopted her, and today she has produced 3 grandkids for us, and we're so proud of that the lessons that we learned about caring for foster children before I even got to DCFS. and and I guess that one of the things that is so uh, forthcoming is the fact that uh, how my career, I guess, got focused in law in child welfare because of that. I knew about them because of the kids that we'd raised. Before I even got there. Same way with the uh, U.S. Marshal. The U.S. Marshals are part of the DOJ, Department of Justice. That's what, and so I'm writing this article, which became the model for the nation, and then I become the U.S. Marshal himself. Yeah, I came in '94. I become the U.S. Marshal, and now prior to that, uh, I become the deputy director of Children's Family Services of Cook County. I had already had experience with foster children, with kids that had been abused.
Right.
So I'm knowing, but I'm thinking I'm knowing. I'm thinking I'm knowing. But Cook County was a different animal. It was a different animal for me, and it started to wear on me. I knew that and here's what when I was coming out of I had reasons for coming out of Savannah, valid reasons. Uh, but the city manager, his name was Don Madonja. He told me, he said, Major, you are a big fish here in Savannah, but you go to Chicago, you're going to be a little fish in an ocean.
Yeah.
And that was, I wish, I don't know. I thought all that was detrimental, going through what I had to go through in Chicago. And I did not adapt very well to doing Chicago. I did not. I talk about it in the book. It took me a while to reconcile, why I didn't do well. And so and I knew I finally figured out because I had been a big fish all my life in my career. State police. I ran everything. I went to Savannah, Georgia. I ran everything in that criminal field. I come back to Chicago. I'm buried under bureaucracy, and I couldn't be me. That was not me. What I had to adjust to was not me. So I'm being a big fish ever since I 3 years on a state police job on down into Savannah, Georgia, and I get recruited back and perhaps thinking that I'm going to be out without the bureaucracy of the governor to the welfare director. Boy, that was something different for me. It was something different. And I didn't adjust to it very well. So they finally said, we finally made a decision that we need to get out of there. This is not the pond. And the man knew that. My Don Badonza told me, you're in the wrong pond. And that's the other point that I want to make to your listeners. You got to choose the right pond. Every pond is not for you to get into. So, and I found that out, but I survived it because there were still people around me knew how that I was sincere, but I didn't have what it took to run that child welfare agency in Chicago. It was a vicious world up there. It was a vicious world in Cook County to take over that 1,500 person um, bureau up there, 1,500 people. But I survived it and for 1 year, and then I got because I didn't have my foot in Springfield, neither did I have my foot in Chicago because I was traveling all the time back and forth.
Right.
Didn't help because I was a community person that was have impact on my community, and I didn't have my foot in either community. So we decided it was time for us to make a change. At least the director tried this would make a change. So they put me back in charge of internal affairs statewide, and I lasted there for 4 years. And then I went back to the state police. One of the things that's the part of the story is the fact that the state police kept me on leave of absence all the time that I was in Savannah, Georgia, all the time I was at DCFS. That was about 9 years. They
Right.
kept me on leave. And so when the rug got pulled out from under me by the new director of DCFS, when she came in, the rug got pulled out. I had to go back to state police. And I had to go back to my same rank that I left in 1985. I was a special agent sergeant. Now, I had been the deputy director of Children's Family Service. I had been the deputy director of charge of criminal investigation down in Savannah. Now I'm back as a state police sergeant where I get. But one of the good things about it, I had a home to go to. And the supervisor, he said he made a wise decision. He said, I ain't gonna mess with you cause you might be gone here and we don't know what you're gonna wind up doing. At the time I was the candidate for the U.S. Marshal position right here in Springfield, Illinois. And so that's when in the book you'll read about how Frederick Douglass and I they tried to massacre us, our character. Mine here in Springfield, Frederick Douglass in 1877. People didn't want us to become U.S. Marshal. Didn't want me to become a U.S. Marshal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a major part of the book in terms of how people just falsified stuff. They wrote to my senators and said that I was not. They could have found a better candidate other than this man who has been accused of sexual harassment. Blah 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 blah. Well, yeah, they fabricated all that stuff.
Right.
Not only fabricated, but sent a letter to all the 50 senators in the United States. Yes, sir, saying that I got sent out of state police because of taking money, etc. Yes, so yeah, that was I had been fighting, and then there was a lady out there that was looking out after me. God always put somebody in your path,
Mm-hmm.
That's Carol Mold LeBron, who recommended me to the president, and she had to go to bat for me. And just like way back in 1877, Senator Conklin had to go to bat for Frederick Douglass because they were saying way back in 1877 that Douglass was going to Africanize the court system, meaning that he's going to get rid of all the white folks in the system and he's going to put all black folks there. In 1877,
Yep.
16 years later, I come along, gets the big thing there with killing black men was just wrap sexual harassment around their neck.
Right.
Just wrap the allegation of sexual harassment around your neck and you were dead. You were dead. But we fought ours. So when I never will forget in my first book, in my second book, I write about the call that I got from her to come to Washington, D.C., heard Senator Paul Simon, to interview for the U.S. Marshal position, because I was one of the top three that were coming to D.C. And I said, why are they bringing me all the way to D.C. if I wasn't getting the job? And so my wife and I, we pop in the car and drive all the way to D.C., get settled in, and get the next day I go for the interview, and they introduced themselves, and I introduced myself, and in the first question out of the senator's mouth, Well, what about these sexual harassment charges? My mouth dropped, because that had not entered in no place in my career. I had not been only my whole career in my life. I got one day off because I wrecked a car, and I spent that traveling. So that was that. But I said, how in the world did we do? But you look in the book and you talk. I describe what it was, what it felt like to be falsely accused.
Right.
What it felt like. But also, I told that I had my backup. I had my backup. I said, Senator, call us, call the state police, call the state police director's office right now, and we'll get this straight. They will tell you that where I work for nothing but white individuals in that office. They'll tell you I had no problem. They had no problem. So I'm on my way back to Pittsburgh, and I get the call from my sister. Said the senator called. Senator call, and I get there and I make the call, and they say, "Congratulations, Marshal Moore." You know what that meant, don't you? Congratulations. That crap had thrown over. But that wasn't the end. I thought that was the end of it. That wasn't the end of it. That wasn't the end of it. It's still there was more to come. There was more to come. But we got through it, and we got to become the marshal, and then we had my experience that I had in the state police kicked in at the marshal at the whole level of federal government. Because time I got certified and got the position here in Springfield, I'm getting a call saying we need you to come to D.C. to chair a EEO advisory committee to the director. Can you believe that? want me to take over. What we found out, everybody was watching. Evidently, Mike, just like you watching me now, I didn't know everybody was watching me. I didn't,
Yep.
but it was a good watch this time.
Right.
Once we got that monkey off my neck, once we got that off my neck, but we had to get that off. That's why the book is talking about getting these things off our neck, and I got, but it's still fighting to get stuff off your neck. It's still there, believe it or not. And when I did a police study for the Springfield Police Department in 2017, there was people that called from the state police saying, you don't want that man doing your police study. Because look what he did for the state police. Look look what he did to the state police. Can you believe somebody remembered that affirmative action progress that was made in the state police that way? That somebody was still, people that didn't even know me, was still trying to kill me out there. But I had to get that off my neck too. What people did, they didn't know. And they called me, the chief called me and said, hey, people still after you. Still after you. But I didn't understand that. I still don't understand why it would matter to them when I ran a program. But in the Marshal Service, people that were interviewed in the state police, they're down below. Oh, they said, oh, he's racist. Call me a racist. Because I got all those black folks hired. It went from 19 black troopers to 250 by 1998. That was suffocating for them.
Right.
Minorities and females by the end of 1988 was over 500. 520 something, that to be a fact. And that got all this, all that got accredited to me. And it was a good thing for me to do that, because in 2021, the assistant director from the state police called and said, we need you to come back 40 years later. asked me to come back and do a summary and do an exhibit of our EEO program that you ran in 1970. Can you believe that?
Wow.
They wanted a memory. They got exhibits that I did the exhibits of Black State Troopers and all the minority troopers. And so I went back and I did that. I chaired the committee, and the people that were uh, on my committee, they got to know me from the standing point of view when I first came aboard, and how and it's a standing replica out there right now in the state police of there were a lot of folks that didn't like what we did, but it said the organization they understood finally understood the importance of the DEI work that we did, and we're so proud of that. So, but coming back through DCFS and to summarize, I have an elevator speech that I tell I have an elevator speech that I do when I'm talking about my career and one short thing of starting with the Winnebago County Sheriff Department as a deputy sheriff in 1972, come to the Illinois State Police, where they let me stay there for 3 years before they bumped me up to EEO director. And then because of what happened there and the other all the things, it launched me up into the executive suites of law enforcement
Right.
nationwide. And once I got to that level, I was constantly being recruited by other folks because I had a skill that no other law enforcement officer had out there. I had civil rights, I had EEO, and I had writing skills. And the writing skills as well as management skills. That was a unique skill for me that nobody else that I was competing with had. And if you wanted a man that could write, if you wanted a man that could manage high level organization, if you wanted a man that has civil rights experience, you will come for me.
Right.
You come to me. And not only
The
wanted
trifecta.
change, I was a change agent. And if you wanted change, my history showed how much change I could bring to your agency. So, so from a short elevator speech, that's how I talk about that career in terms of how it goes. But then we go on into coming, U.S. Marshal and the big return. I call it the big return
Back home.
back home, back home. I talk about that little girl that what was the name that scarecrow that girl that wanted to go home. She
Yeah.
clicked the hill.
Dorothy.
Dorothy, Dorothy,
Yep.
Dorothy would click her heel
Yep.
and she'd go back home. And that's what I did. I came back and I
Full
clicked
circle
my
moment.
I clicked my heels and I went home to manage the largest police department in the state of Mississippi. And I stayed there for 3 years. And my mayor, Mayor Harvey Johnson, was the very first black mayor. And another black man come on and beat him. So that kicked us out. When you lose, you lose, So, but that was for me, that was
So
an
you say
unjust.
elections have consequences.
Their election has consequences, and I have been the recipient of a lot of that. They say when we lost when I was a marshal and Al Gore lost the election here, I probably would have stayed as the marshal because on the Democratic side I would have been I'd have still been there. So, but he lost, and there were consequences that hanging Chad, and I write about that in the book, the hanging Chad, in the book, and how that affected me, those things. But as I stayed 3 years in Jackson, and then my other skills kicked in, my writing skills. My first book came out in The President's Men, in 2010. That was my very first book that I published. I had written a lot of articles, but it was my very first book. And so, and it went well. It's called The President's Men, Black U.S. Marshals in America. And then what we did with that was we kind of just gave America a snapshot of black marshals that had been appointed by both presidents, both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrats. And of course, if you were a Democrat, you did for the good. If you were on the Republican side, you didn't do very well. And so uh, I kind of broke the mold here in Springfield when Trump came in, and that was a
Okay, it looks like we lost Mr. Moore. He had a couple of technical issues that he was working through, but it looks like we lost him. But the good part about it is that we pretty much finished the interview. So that's good. And because when you are doing these interviews, one thing's for sure is that you are very likely to have technical issues. But yeah, he had pretty much finished. The only thing I think that we were going to go over was these shared principles that he talks about, but he talks about them in the book. And these principles he shared between the NAACP as well as the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police. And those principles also kind of became a national model. So as you can see, Mr. Moore has a very storied career, and his story is very, very unique. But at any rate, make sure that you go out. Now, he basically went through I'm not sure if he has an audio book out or not, but he basically went through the entire book. Remember, the book is a memoir. So he basically told the story right here on the Black Man's Roundtable. And if you want to use this interview as kind of a guide through the book as you read it, then I think that might be a great source, a great thing for you to do. But either way, he hit on just about everything in the book. But however, the book is going to go into, more detail, obviously. But otherwise, the name of the book is Off My Neck by Robert Moore. It is on Amazon and pretty much wherever you get, most books commercially, online. Definitely check him out. And you can go to his website as well in order to, find out a little bit more about him, in order to order the book and all of those things. So, but anyway, it was a great interview. And Mr. Moore, the Honorable Mr. Moore, we enjoyed you. We were glad you were on. We look forward to having you back, especially when we talk about police issues, especially in the Black community. Those things are coming up, and you and I have already talked about it a little bit, and you have basically let us know that you will be more than happy to come back on and talk about those things. So we're definitely looking forward to that. So thank you, sir, for coming on. We apologize about, your technical issues that you were having, but again, it's okay because we got pretty much just about everything in. So, and again, we look very, very forward to having you back on. And so with that, catch the Black Man's Roundtable podcast the third Thursday of the month. Also catch the BMR's Roundup with Rodney and Rodney the second Thursday of the month. And the BMR's Local Lookout with Rodney and Bobby the first Thursday of the month. All episodes drop at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Until next time, we'll see you in them suites and them streets. Peace. Hey, family. If you like what you saw, visit our website at blackmansroundtable.com for more information or to check out more content. Until next time, we'll see you in them suites and them streets. Peace.
Woke up to the sound of the struggle, echoes loud in the street. Generations of pain in the rhythm, blood and tears in the beat. From the corners to the courtrooms, we decipher the code. Every word that we speak is a chapter, every step is a road. They try to silence the story, rewrite the pages in gold. But the truth don't need no filter, the truth don't need no hope.
This is the anthem, the voice of the unheard. Standing tall in the fire, speaking life with each word. From the roots to the branches, we rise through the pain. Black man's roundtable, we're breaking the chain.
Microphone in my hand like a weapon, wisdom passed down through the ages. Every topic we tackle, every fight on these stages. They say we're too loud when we whisper, too proud when we kneel. But the power in our voices is the power that's real.
This is the anthem, the voice of the unheard. Standing tall in the fire, speaking life with each word. From the roots to the branches, we rise to the pain. Black man's roundtable, we're breaking the chain. This is the anthem, the voice of the unheard. Standing tall in the fire, speaking life with each word. From the roots to the branches, we rise through the pain. Black man's roundtable, we're breaking the chains.
Unapologetically black. We'll see you in them suites and them streets where we're flipping tables like Jesus.
We're breaking the chains.